To quote Mike McDaniel, the best thing about today is it's another day closer to death.
You are Locked On Dolphins, your daily Miami Dolphins podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, Miami, welcome to another episode of Locked On Dolphins. It is your team every day here on the Locked On Network. I'm your host, Kyle Krabs, a lifelong Miami Dolphins fan, host of Locked On Dolphins, co-host of Locked On NFL Scouting, author of Touchdown Miami on Substack, NFL staff writer for A to Z Sports. Want to give a special welcome and shout out to our everydayers because it is your team every day. We don't just say it, we live it here on the Locked On Network. Today's episode of Locked On Dolphins is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off of your first purchase. I'm sorry. I went to bed last night and must have fallen asleep in the hot tub time machine because I woke up today and watched a game from the 2019 Miami Dolphins. That's what it felt like. TV broadcast says the Dolphins, who lose to Indianapolis 33-8. We'll get into that lone touchdown the Dolphins have. We'll get into that 2-point conversion the Dolphins have. Fewest yards in the first half of a game since at least 1991. 3 turnovers for Tua Tagovailoa. The first interception, inbreaker to Tyreek Hill on third down, sails a Cambine and picks it off. The second one, Devon Achane completely misses nickel pressure from Kenny Moore. Tua has to step up in the pocket. Not great ball security in that moment in time from Tua, but also Devon Achane. You put some responsibility on him in pass protection as a guy who was just an abject disaster in pass protection last year in the first place. Second one, you get fumble, you get a strip sack. The third one, Tua has time, plenty of time, rolls, slides, throws it directly to Leatu Latu, the Colts pass rusher who's dropping into coverage, trying to force a throw to Malik Washington. There was every talking point about this team that was in a negative light and a negative sense. This game doubled down on it. And I want to start with this, okay? Because I don't want to sit here and read all the depressing numbers that exist of how the Colts scored on all 7 of their possessions, and it's the first time in forever that the Dolphins didn't get a single stop in a game, and how Daniel Jones had almost 200 passing yards in the first half of this game, which was a career high for him in his first start. I want to start here. I sent out a post about an hour before the game started on Twitter, and it said, "Offseason was fun. It's in your hands now, guys." And it was the gift from the end of Sons of Anarchy, where Charlie Hunnam takes his hands off the steering of the motorcycle, and he just closes his eyes and is just driving down the center of the road. It's out of our hands, right? If you're somebody who appreciates the even-keeled nature in which I try to take a lot of responsibility in having on the program, because it's never as high as it feels, or it's never as low as it feels. And I spend the off season exploring the why and not being presumptive. And then I go through and it logically makes sense, the why that they have. And I'm kind of subscribed because you see in the preseason and you see the player implementation, these new pieces. Nothing changed today. Nothing changed as far as early down run success. Can't stay with it. And I understand that you couldn't stop a nosebleed defensively, and the game script became negative because you had 2 turnovers in 3 plays and set the Colts up for a bunch of points. So you couldn't maybe come out and run the ball the way that you wanted to because you felt like you were chasing the scoreboard from way too early on. And I understand that exists. And you want to try to give the why a chance to play out, and you see the personnel moves and you see the preseason and what it looks like. You say, okay, like, there appears to be some functional change and shift in focus here. This game plan looked exactly like last year's offensively. The touchdown was on 4th down a throw behind the line of scrimmage in the red zone, not even inside the 10-yard line to Devon Achane, who proceeded to do all the work by himself. Yeah, guys lining up in the wrong places. You got to burn a timeout on 2-point conversion because you shift, and then Tyreek's supposed to motion, but the play clock's cut all the way too far down. So you got to burn a timeout, and then you come out of the timeout. You run the exact same play. You just cut the shift out of it and just have Tyreek Hill motion to the other side and then have Tua roll out and hit Julian Hill for a 2-point conversion. You burn a timeout down 30-6 in the fourth quarter on a 2-point conversion because you can't run the shift and motion correctly. That's the part that's the most disheartening because you're assuming we talk about player progression is not linear. This team's progression, this looked like it was an offensive performance transplanted out of the worst of what last year existed with. And Bobby Slowick comes out and talks about we're not pushing the envelope of what the scheme is capable of being. We're focused on reacting post-snap. Where there was a big point of emphasis for us. This is what we do. This is how we have ownership of it. It didn't work. And I think that's where the concern for me lies for 2025 and its outlook. And I went through and tried to be objective. And I think even those who expected the worst case scenarios for Miami didn't possibly expect a game that looks this bad to be the product. Maybe it's just week one. Maybe. But the alarms are going off because the things that you thought that they made strides with their personnel and their coaches and what they were saying to try to adjust, it doesn't look like it's any different. And that becomes the definition of insanity and just ramming your head into the wall, trying the same thing over again. We had a lot of injuries in this game. Austin Jackson with a toe. That was what he missed the early or effectively all of training camp with. James Daniels went down on the first possession with a pec after being questionable and having an injury with his ankle at practice. So the entire right side of the offensive line, by the end of the game, it was back to Keon Smith and Larry Borum as the right side of the offensive line. Zach Wilson made a cameo appearance. Tyreek Hill went into the injury tent. Jalen Waddle went into the injury tent. They didn't win enough on early downs, but I think you give Shane Steichen and the Colts credit. They did a good job on early downs, I thought, passing and taking advantage of soft space. You had some boneheaded plays. I could boil this game in and of itself down to 5 plays for you that embody the entirety of the game. We're going to get into those next here. Locked On Dolphins. Make sure you guys stick with us. Today's episode of Locked On Dolphins is brought to you by Prize Picks, the daily fantasy app where making the right call can actually pay off. You and I make decisions every day, but on Prize Picks, being right means cashing in. With football back, Prize Picks is the simplest and fastest way to get in on all the action. Just pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections, and you can turn your takes into real prizes all in less than 60 seconds. It's quick, easy. It's my favorite way to go about the weekend with football. This week's max discount includes Lamar Jackson. You can take more or less on 1/2 of 1 passing yard. Download the Prize Picks app today. Use code LOCKEDONNFL. Get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONNFL for $50 in lineups after you play your first $5. Prize Picks. It's good to be right. Dolphins fans, you still paying full price for gas? Stop leaving money behind. Get real cash every day, every time you fill up with the free Upside app. Simply download the free Upside app in the App Store or Google Play right now and start earning cash at the pump today. Use my limited time promo code TOUCHDOWN and get an extra 25 cents pack per gallon on your first fill up. You can make up to $300 a year just by buying the gas you already need. Feel like it's too good to be true, but it is totally legit. Real people getting real money back just for their daily commutes, and you can too. Plus, you can cash out anytime to your bank account, PayPal, or e-gift card for Amazon or other brands. Don't let this offer drive on by. Download the free Upside app now using promo code TOUCHDOWN for a limited time for 25 cents per gallon bonus. That's promo code TOUCHDOWN. Offers vary by user and location. Go to upside.com for terms and conditions. 5 plays you can boil this down to. I actually kept like the coach's notepad throughout the course of the game. Here's the 5 plays that I think really embody what happened for the Dolphins today. You have the incompletion from Tua Tagovailoa to Tyreek Hill, which was in and of itself a bad miss. And that kind of opens the door getting into some of the Tua conversation out of this game. Little alarm by the ball velocity, spin rate, consistency for Tua in this game. There's some muddy pockets. There was some time that you had to kind of make things happen in congested pockets, but there was also times where you had clean pockets, and we simply did not spin the ball. I don't think his arm looks like it has as much gas as what it has in past years, and that's alarming because you have an offense that's constructed and tailored to the quarterback's strengths. And we perceived as though they did other things to add other clubs in the bag for how the offense could operate. We didn't see him in week 1. So let's just start there. But then that was the money throw. That was the money area for Miami. And the first opportunity that you had to have it with Tyreek Hill, you sailed it. And like there's all kinds of discourse around right, wrong routes, this, that, the other thing. It was a bad throw. It was a throw that was high. And it was a throw that was behind. And it spent a lot of time in the air and allowed safety to get it over the top, and it's an interception. Now, Zaire Franklin has an unnecessary roughness penalty, and they end up taking over the 16 after an interception, but they still went down and scored points because that takes you to the second of the plays, which is Storm Duck on 2nd and 20. Everybody's asking in the first quarter, where's the pass rush? Right? Where's the pass rush? Well, the Dolphins' defense in this game, 3rd and 2, 3rd and 8, forced a field goal. Those were the opening drive. 3rd and 3, 3rd and 1, 3rd and 1, 3rd and 1. 3rd and 5, forced a punt. 3rd and 10, you jumped off sides. They get a first down anyway because you stopped playing because you jumped off sides. 3rd and 10, you forced a 4th and 2. 4th and 2, they convert. 3rd and 2. Like you had almost no behind the stick situations. And one of the times you get it, you finally have a pass rusher who gets home on Daniel Jones, sets up 2nd and 20. And this is the second of the defining plays in this game. Storm Ducks playing cover 2. They highlighted on the broadcast. There's nobody in the flat. There's nobody in the flat. And if somebody's running vertical on the outside and you're a cover 2 corner and there's nobody to hold you down in the flat, you got to sink. And Storm Duck, he did the same thing on that alarming 3rd and long against the Bears that the ball was not in the right place and it ended up being incomplete. And it was that exotic coverage rotation that Jason Marshall had where he was up in the nickel and then he ends up running out of there and playing a deep half. On the other side of the field, that would have been a 3rd down conversion. The cloud cover corner player, you have to play the sticks. It's 2nd and 20. Pittman ran right by you. You have to sink. So then that's a 2nd and 20 touchdown pass because our cover 2 corner is holding the flat for nobody instead of sinking and getting out of there to be able to squeeze and compress that throwing window and challenge it. That's play number 2. And that's the concerns about the secondary. That's where it comes to life. The third is the strip sack by Tua Tagovailoa with Devon Achane, where Achane misses Kenny Moore and then he peels back late and tries to get a piece, but there's no impactful disruption to Kenny Moore. And Tua steps up in the pocket to try to maneuver and has poor ball security and the ball pops out. Tua's ultimately got to protect the ball, but from the play design perspective, I'm losing track of the amount of times we're putting the weight of responsibility on tight ends like Tanner Connor and running backs like Devon Achane to try to block guys, and it's just not happening, right? So this was where, when you looked at some of their personnel changes and you bring in a bigger back and you see how successful Ollie Gordon is, you say, hey, we anticipate this season they're going to show more of X because Y was a problem last year. And then you get into the first game and you just do Y all over again. So that's play number 3. Play number 4, the Dolphins with 4:04 left in the first half. They're down 20-0. They force a punt. Was it 17-0 or 20-0 at this point? They force a punt. The Colts, by the way, had 3 possessions of 15-plus plays on the drive. They had 5 in the entire year last year. You force a punt. Matthew Judon runs into the punter on 4th and 3 on a play that would have set the Dolphins up on the plus side of the 30, down 3 scores with getting the ball back at halftime, where you say, hey, if you put together a drive here, you go down, you get some points, and you come out and you execute after half, the next time the Colts touch the ball, it could be a 1-score game. Instead, with 4:04 left, the Colts get that drive extended because Judon runs into the leg of the punter on the punt for 5 yards on a 4th and 3, and they possess the ball until the end of half. That's minus on the scoreboard as far as the net. It's minus on the yardage. It's minus on time of possession. It's minus on possessions throughout the course of the game. It's brutal. It's brutal. So that's the 4 plays in the first half of this game that I think really embody the game. And then you go back to the touchdown pass to Devon Achane, which is a ball behind the line of scrimmage. And that, again, goes back to some of the talking points for Tua when you're tailoring to Tua's strengths and weaknesses and what he is as a player. He did not look like himself today as far as being able to spin the ball and hitting some windows and having anticipation with placement. And it's year 4 of this offense, right? The expectation is you're going to be able to have some semblance of hitting the ground running. I'd go back to the Jalen Waddle implementation versus Tyreek Hill. Jalen Waddle had all the reps throughout the offseason program, training camp. Waddle's the wide receiver 1. How do you think it played out today? How many catches do you think Jalen Waddle had in this game? How many catches do you think Tyreek Hill, who missed the entire program, had in this game? Tyreek Hill has 4 catches for 40 yards. Jalen Waddle finishes for 4 catches for 30 yards, 7.5 yards per catch. It's a tunnel screen in there. And Hill obviously had the targets that end up going nuclear on you and the first interception. It's super frustrating. And that's where when you talk about, I can only evaluate the pieces and what they show throughout your scoutable reps. This, for me, is a big black eye for Mike McDaniel amidst the concerns that exist about him being a hot seat coach. Because Larry Csonka said it best. Unprepared. What was it? I want to make sure I get the exact quote from Larry right here. Unprepared, uninspired, unacceptable. And he's right. And this was, hey, we're ready to take back the narrative. Everybody's really bought in. This is the effort. So where do you go from here? Right? The Dolphins finished giving up 418 yards to the Colts, 6 yards of play, 156 rushing yards. The Colts are 3 for 3 on 4th downs because they were all super short yardage. You're almost 2-1 in time of possession. You lose the turnover battle 3-0. Tua sacked 3 times. There's a Zach Wilson cameo at the end of the game. We're going to talk about where you go from here, because I think that's where we have to wrap our head around what this performance was, while acknowledging, like, I did have optimism for this season, but if you play like this and you play like this the next couple of weeks, we are talking about very early changes, because this is not sustainable. And it's like Larry Csonka said, this is not acceptable. You got a coach on the hot seat, and this is how well prepared the team is to play the game today. Where do we go from here? We're getting into that next. Stick with us. NFL season is back. There's nothing better than being in the stadium surrounded by fans, cheering on the team. But let's be honest, getting tickets can be a hassle between queues, login screens, prices, jumping at checkout. It can be super frustrating. That's why I use Game Time, the app that gives an advantage back to fans. Game Time is fast, easy, backed by the Game Time guarantee. You will always get 100% authentic tickets delivered on time at the best price. All fees are included with all-in pricing, so the price you see is the price you pay. You can pull up Game Time on your phone, and in just a few taps, you can get tickets as low as $100. It's faster, cheaper, and less stressful than any other way that I have bought tickets before. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms to apply. Again, promo code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Download Game Time today. Obviously, a lot of fans have a lot of emotion off of a game like this. Season opener. You spent all year getting geared up for the Dolphins to play a football game today, and they didn't get the memo that there was a game today. That's a big gut punch. So, and that's not, even if you had the lower ends of the spectrum for what the Dolphins season would look like, I don't think you would have guessed this. So where do you go from here as far as what this season looks like? It is 1 out of 17 in the win column, right? You don't want to ride the roller coaster too much. And you want to be fair. It's 1 game out of 17. There's a lot of games left to be played. But was this your best shot to start the year? If it is, then we will not take long to see changes. Every week from here, and including reviewing the film from this game, is going to be comprised of evaluating football and scheme and individual play. It's all very complicated. There's a lot of layers to it. And I try to honor that by how I do content. And some people get irritated by that because that means I'm too conservative or too positive or negative on the wrong thing, or I don't get entertaining enough because I don't get emotional. Whatever the feedback is, and I get that. I have a very analytical kind of lecture how like a lot of my college professors would lecture at me is how I talk to the camera while working through my own process of how I'm processing what's going on with the team. So I try to take it seriously, that platform and that approach. We try to have a little fun now and again, but I'm going to make it very simple. This complicated onion that we have to unravel, we're going to make it very simple. Every single week, there's one single question that I have to ask for coaches, players, effort, personnel, situational football, availability and injuries. And the question is this: are you a part of the problem or are you a part of the solution? And I have a feeling when I go through the game tape and I look back on how this game played out, there's going to be a whole lot of players who fit in the bucket of part of the problem. Not everybody, right? And I think that's where it becomes important to boil it down to this very simple binary black and white perspective. Because if this season plays out like this, you have to be prepared to know who the players are that you perceive to be a part of the solution. Who are the coaches who you perceive to be a part of the solution? And the decisions that you make have to be geared towards those players in mind. Because I don't think you have to have nuclear blow everything up like you did in 2019, because you have young players and young talent, and you have intriguing talent. And I thought there were a lot of young players that at least flashed some promising things. But the effort today was fundamentally broken. And you have to ask why. Who has their hand in that? And I don't suspect it's going to be very easy to accurately hit 100% on who's on what side of the spectrum. But you have a lot of problems to sort through out of this football game. And every week, I want to keep a tally that builds throughout the season. Last year was the above or below expectation on any given play for every player. Nope. I'm going to have the roster, and at the end of every game, and I'm going to keep tally all season long. Problem, solution. Who's in what bucket? And when you get to the end of the year, if this is how it's going to play out, I'm going to have a head count on who's on this side, and I'm going to have a head count on who's on this side. And we're going to plan accordingly. And that's what we're going to call for the team to do as well. But right now, we got to look in the mirror. The Miami Dolphins got to look in the mirror. That's Mike McDaniel. That's Chris Grier. Even at this stage, I don't think Chris Grier has anything he can do at this stage of the game. That's Tua Tagovailoa. That's everybody. That's Stephen Ross. We got to look in the mirror. Because it's year 4 and you brought back for continuity's sake and a chance to see this through and fix what you perceive the problems to be and kind of go back and undo how you pushed the envelope a little too far and you flew a little too close to the sun, whether that's Chris Grier and trading draft picks for players and getting your contracts unbalanced, or that's Mike McDaniel and pushing the limits of what the offense is capable of, is what they talked about last year. Well, it looked just as complex, probably unnecessarily at times, today against the Colts. And now the player who the offense is tailored for, to me, did not look comfortable executing what the team was trying to execute. That's the big flag. That's the big alarm bell for me. We'll see. 33-8. Cock grabs, keep it locked in right here on Locked On Dolphins. That's going to do it for me here today on the show. We will pick up the pieces this week, and we will get that head count of problems and solutions. And it'll be the first of 17 we do this season long as we continue to evaluate what this year looks like, how the season unfolds. Here's hoping for a better week next week than what we had today. Keep it locked in. I'm out of here.